On this week's episode of Top of the List, we are discussing WandaVision episode 5. Another of our weekly Wanda reviews coming at you on a Saturday morning. Maybe the lighting's a little bit better than usual, you can tell. We're considering starting to record on Saturdays instead, just so we can get a little more of that daylight in our shots, makes everything a little clearer, a little crisper. But of course, we're talking episode 5. I'm Dom, and this is our host, RB. So I think we should just start it right off. RB, what did you think about this week's episode, spoiler free?
Yep.
We'll give a spoiler warning when we're going to talk big details, but spoiler free, what are your thoughts?
Another great episode as far as I'm concerned, with the exception of our little hiccup, at least from my point of view, in episode 3. We've been hitting the nail on the head every week. They've definitely decided, I guess we could go with sort of to use an analogy, an onion technique. They're peeling it back layer by layer.
Yeah.
Just a little new information that comes out in every episode. I don't know that I'm crazy about it. Like I said, I've become so in love with MCU films. I get frustrated at the end of every episode that I don't know everything. But that being said, the episodes are great, and I'm going to give this one a 9.5 out of 10. A lot of new information in this episode. I'm all for it. There were some minor quirks that I wasn't crazy about this week, but otherwise 9.5 out of 10, but just a few little things that held it back from being a 10 out of 10.
Right on. Yeah, I think we're in kind of the same idea here. I'm going to give this episode a 9 out of 10. This was the best episode so far.
Yep.
Definitely starts playing with that structure we were talking about in last week's episode, where they're going to pop back and forth between inside Wanda's, Westview and outside of it with a sword. So I like how they're flipping between that. And I don't want to say what happens besides that, because there's lots of crazy stuff that happens in this episode. Mm-hmm. But I do want to talk about the acting, and that's pretty spoiler free. And you guys will know why when we talk spoilers, but I think Paul Bettany is really amazing in this episode. I think he's kind of he's been the biggest surprise.
Paul Bettany's a brilliant actor. I mean, if you look at him outside of his work in the MCU, he's fantastic. And we didn't necessarily get to see his full range on display in MCU phases. Well, I guess he appeared in phase 2, but phases 2 and 3. Now we're really getting to see his whole range, not just as Vision, the sort of supercomputer automaton, but as Vision, the person, becoming more human and learning more tendencies. So yeah, I think he is brilliant in this episode and brilliant in just about everything I've seen him in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I read a few articles on the show after what we have as like a cliffhanger ending on this one. Mm-hmm. Had to read more, yeah. And we'll talk about that.
Oh yeah, I'm excited to discuss that.
But so far, what I've read from some of our critics out there is that I want to know if you have these same issues. Not as much comedy in this one, and a lot of people have been saying that switching back and forth between this Westview and real world,
New Jersey.
Flipping back and forth between those two, I guess we'll just call them realities for now. Between those two realities, it took away from what those first 2 episodes had, where felt like it was full-scale homage to the sitcom. This one has a lot of homages, but it feels like it was lessened.
Yeah, but I think they need to do that. Yeah. If we want to get somewhere with this show, I mean, we only have after this episode 4 episodes remaining. Mm-hmm. So I think they need to do that, and I think they bridged it very excellently. There's an awesome scene that I want to talk about once we get to spoilers that I think plays that really nicely. The bridging of the sitcom world versus the real world, as now more and more outside factors are getting involved.
Yeah, I feel exactly the same way you do. That's I couldn't have put it better myself. That's the main reason why I disagree with these critics. We only have 4 episodes left. Yeah. Just like you said, we need to get the ball rolling, and this one does exactly that. 9 out of 10 for me, amazing. Which we characterize each increment and number with a
word or term.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. And for 9 and above, or for 9 and 9.5, we characterize that as amazing.
Amazing, yep.
So a must-see episode. Definitely go check it out, guys, right now, and then come back for our spoiler section. You guys can pause it now and come back later. So spoiler alert. Spoiler alert.
Yep.
Okay, biggest spoilers.
I think we should just start from the beginning, or not quite Yeah, I guess from the beginning, you know, we're bouncing back and forth between Westview and, you know, our FBI / sword / whoever else is involved, you know, mobile lab in New Jersey, just outside of Westview, and the Westview or Maximoff anomaly. There's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
I think the first big spoiler we get is that the people of Westview are 100% just, you know, they now see the craziness that Wanda and Vision bring, and they're okay with it. And I think that's something that was very different in this episode that wasn't before, which is why we get one of the biggest character changes in this episode, Vision beginning to catch on to what's going on.
I think that's our biggest spoiler here, is that, you know, there's been breadcrumbs every episode. You know, first it was, you know, the beehive guy, and then after that it was something that happened when the babies were coming.
Right. I mean, even how about before the babies, you know, Vision is even starting to catch on when the guy's sawing through his brick wall when he's trimming his hedges, you know. So I think Vision has always been the wiser, not the wiser, but starting to catch on. And this episode is really on display.
The guise of Westview is being lifted to him. And I think that was his biggest reveal in this episode, especially when he figures out how to use his powers, how to lift Wanda's mind control on one of his coworkers at the computer plant. Or computer factory.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, we get a reasoning for what's going on and how Vision is still alive in this episode back at the sword facility. You know, we see highly classified footage of Wanda breaking into the facility where Vision's corpse is. And, you know, we find out that it was his will that he wanted to be left dead, not resuscitated in any way, or if they get the Mind Stone brought back, because he didn't want to be anybody's weapon, because that's what he was to Thanos. You know, the Mind Stone was the final stone, if I'm not mistaken, that they used to create the Infinity Gauntlet, or to complete the Infinity Gauntlet before the snap in Infinity War.
Right.
And yet Wanda denies those wishes, as far as we can tell, and brings him back to life. Something we've never seen any MCU character able to do, recreate life.
Yeah, and they say it in this episode, actually, that Wanda is showing powers that are not on her level, which is where, I know we have more spoilers to talk about, but I want to get into my theory.
Go right ahead, yeah.
Okay, this is my favorite part when we do these shows. So here's what I'm thinking. I think there's a higher power at control still.
Okay, I
think Wanda is, she has mind control powers. Like she shows when another big spoiler is that she leaves Westview, walks through what we now know is the Hex.
Yes.
Which is really cool, by the way, that they named it that, because she's Scarlet Witch, and obviously this would be something related to her being a witch, and it's a hex. I love that naming.
Right.
But she walks out, and she meets up with all these sword. What do you want to call them?
Agents,
sword agents. And she basically says, you know, don't bother me in my home and I won't destroy you, or, you know, she threatens them. And then she mind controls all the soldiers to shoot at the director, aim at the director. And so she does have mind control,
right?
But we haven't seen how far it can go, and I guess Westview is our one example of that.
Right, but that being said, there were some, you know, if we're talking theories, there were some small statements that make me agree with you, in the sense that I don't think Wanda is the only person in control. I think there's something that happened when she brought Vision back that helped create this anomaly that she's not in control of. And we had that great example at the very end of this episode. I know we're jumping ahead if you had some spoilers for the middle parts of the episode, which I know I did, but I do want to just talk about that part where, the very end, where her and Vision are talking, and you don't know if Wanda's telling the truth or not, that she's controlling everything, because she says she's not. And we don't know if she's just trying to pacify Vision or if she actually means it. And then we get the scene where Pietro, which I know you want to talk about more, but let's just say Pietro, knocks on the door, she opens it up, and there is utter shock in Wanda's eyes, which makes you believe she's not the only one controlling
I
anything.
think there's some more bigger power. And I want to say that it's like Truman Show, where
Mhm.
you know Wanda's at the center of all of it, just like Truman is.
Mhm.
But again, there's that man in the room above that's watching everything,
Right.
and there's something. I think there's got to be like some god or demon or some celestial entity.
Right. Yeah,
that
I
is doing
think
something.
we've seen with of course Guardians of the Galaxy too, the presence of Celestials in this universe. Yeah. But I definitely agree with you. I think it's a little different from Truman Show because Truman did not know, period.
Right.
I mean, obviously Wanda is the wiser. Wanda has some idea that she created this anomaly community, whatever, with her and Vision so that they can live out their lives happily. But there are other things at play here beyond Wanda, beyond Sword and Monica Rambeau, and because she is Sword, but then there's also FBI agents and whatnot. There's other factors at play that we do not know about yet, that they do not know about yet. Or maybe Wanda does know. Maybe Wanda made an agreement with one of these Celestials so as to be able to, recreate life or whatnot.
We'll see, how she was able to maximize her powers, or there's going to be an explanation. But like you said, we get little pieces of new information each episode.
Yep.
And I guess we should just talk about the biggest twist in WandaVision so far.
Well, I don't know if there's one more thing. I think I know what you're going to talk about real quickly. There's one thing right before that twist that I want to talk about that was brilliantly
the best scenes in the show so far.
Yeah. The credit sequence.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, straight out of the 80s sitcom, we have the credits rolling as, typically the music.
Wanda's controlling that.
Yeah. Typically, though, you look at these sitcoms, Full House is the one that comes to mind. Credits scroll, we have music, maybe there's some actions going on in the background, but the volume cuts. Wanda says, I want to go to bed. She controls the credits start rolling, and Vision says no. And they have a full-on argument with the credits scrolling that lead to both of them getting ready to wield their powers against each other.
Yeah, it's awesome. And Vision is heartbreaking in this one. He says, I can't remember anything before Westview. Like, his performance is insane.
Incredible.
It's so great. And it's like, she's like, I want to say something here, but my tongue got tied. This is the first time that we see them fully this episode. I mean, when I say this episode is the first time we see them fully resuming their character and personalities as we know them from the MCU films, right? We got to see Wanda in her Scarlet Witch outfit using her real accent that she would use in the movies. And we get to see Vision back to the way that he was before. But then again, he's incomplete. He's there's something wrong that happened. He doesn't remember everything.
Exactly. Yeah, he doesn't remember anything. About it. Yeah.
That's what's so unsettling about it.
There's the great line as well where, he goes, what's outside of Westview? And she says, you don't want to know.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm really excited to see where they go with that. We have the credit scene rolling. We have the big argument between Wanda and Vision. They finally settle down a bit, and then...
Can we go back to the beginning of the episode, which I think starts with kind of like a big twist?
Yeah, go ahead.
Right? So one thing we haven't talked about is Wanda's children keep aging really fast, and they have powers of their own, it seems, to age faster or to speed up time.
Yeah, I mean, and we didn't know that at first, if that's, just the anomaly or if that's their power, until we see it when Sparky, the dog that enters in this episode, dies, and they want to age up again to get through the sadness. And Wanda says, no, don't age. You can't just escape death. Of course, sort of hypocritical, because we've just found out that she's the one who's preserving, at least as far as we know, preserving Vision's life. And, they ask her, please bring back the dog. You can see the shock in her eyes saying, I can't do that. But really, we know she can, or maybe she can't. Once again, maybe there's a higher power involved, and Wanda is just somewhat of a scapegoat right now.
And of course, forgive me, I always forget the names, but can you remember the neighbor that keeps showing up, their next door neighbor that was holding the dead dog? It starts with A, I think it's
Agnes.
Agnes.
Yeah.
Okay. So Agnes plays a big role. She has some big moments in this episode.
Oh, yeah.
Number one, right at the beginning, we get a break of character, which was really insane to me, which is playing into my theory. We're talking about my theory here, that there's a higher power. I think that Agnes is either the higher power, or Agnes is like the one that is trying to make sure Wanda doesn't realize that someone else is controlling her. Right. Because she says, do you want me to take it back from the top? She looks right at Wanda like that, like Wanda is the director.
Right, exactly, yeah. That is, and honestly, that's sort of the scene that starts the domino effect with Vision. I mean, we have her see that first, and then, you know, the children aging afterwards, which Vision is shocked that
she's using her powers in front of Agnes,
to create the dog collar, yeah. So definitely that was a big point. I had forgotten about that completely, but yeah. And, you know, Vision starts to say, wow, you know, she's acting a little weird. And she goes, oh, you know, we haven't gotten much sleep and she's exhausted. She keeps on trying to change the subject, as does Agnes. So clearly I would say Agnes is most likely in on this as well. So it's really exciting to see where they're going with this. Of course, as we found out last episode, everyone in the Westview anomaly, they're actual people, you know, they are able to find that out. And we get more of that in the episode when Vision uses his mind powers on his coworker, you know, so much pain, you know, she's controlling me. Now, of course, we never hear if that's actually Wanda. We just hear that she is controlling me.
I think that we've got to have some other sort of telepath doing this. And now I want to get into our big final spoiler, which is what's leading me to my theory, because I want to talk about telepaths. And of course, the most famous telepaths come from our friends, the X-Men.
Yes.
And why am I talking about the X-Men, Ryan, in this episode?
Well, of course, when Pietro, Quicksilver, shows back up on screen, the big finale of this episode, it is not the Pietro Maximoff that we saw in Avengers Age of Ultron.
Right, Aaron Taylor Johnson.
Yes, this is actually the Quicksilver, and I did not know this. Dom shared this with me, so credit where credit's due. This is the Quicksilver that was in the X-Men series.
Yeah, I think he debuts in X-Men Days of Future Past. I think that's what it is. Okay. It might be the one before that, X-Men First Class. I can't remember which first one he's in, but it's one of the newer X-Men movies where it's Michael Fassbender is Magneto. I think you know who the characters are. Michael Fassbender is Magneto, and there's a new Charles Xavier, which is Professor X. It's not Patrick Stewart.
Right, anymore. It's the guy from Switch, from Split.
Yeah,
I can't think of his name right now, but yeah,
James McAvoy.
James McAvoy is a brilliant actor. But
so that's this Quicksilver getting. His name is Evan Peters, right? And he is phenomenal as Quicksilver, by the way. He has some of the coolest scenes in these X-Men movies where he's using his powers. Really awesome. I want you to, Ryan hasn't seen Days of Futures Past yet. That is when Quicksilver is introduced. Amazing movie. Amazing movie. You need to check that one out, buddy. But back on topic. So we're talking about X-Men here. Is this confirmation that the MCU is merging Fox's X-Men universe that they have purchased with the MCU? What do you think, RB?
I think it has to be. And, you know, we keep on discussing how this entire phase 4 of the MCU is going to be all about the multiverse. We're getting a little taste of it here in this is our first installment of MCU phase 4, correct? Yeah. Because Spider-Man Far From Home was still phase 3.
Right.
Okay, so this is our first installment. And what better way would there be to introduce all these new characters that we already know, but our characters in the MCU phase 1 through 3 don't know, than by introducing a multiverse, knowing that these are all going on at the same time in different versions of Earth. And I'm all for it. I'm all for it with the X-Men. I think we've discussed as well that this may be the way in Spider-Man as well, with getting Tobey Maguire involved, as well as Andrew Garfield. So I'm all for it.
Alfred Molina returning to play Doc Ock in Spider-Man 3. Words just yesterday, I was reading some rumors on Twitter. Willem Dafoe was spotted on set at Spider-Man 3. Could be reprising his role. Yeah. That would be freaking amazing. Yeah. But whether or not this is that, I think it is. Look at the title, A Very Special Episode. Is this when we finally get the X-Men in the MCU? My answer is yes. I think we're getting X-Men into the MCU. I think we're going to get all the Marvel properties coming into the MCU. You know, Sony has a deal with Disney. Fox is now part of Disney. I think we're going to get this giant Marvel umbrella. We've heard word that the guy that directed Spider-Man Far From Home, John Watts, he's going to be bringing Fantastic Four into our MCU. we're going to get our full Marvel universe in phase 4 and beyond, which makes me all happy. Blade, all of that stuff.
Absolutely.
We're bringing everything together.
Yeah, really excited about that.
And it all starts with WandaVision.
Yeah, but I think there are just, so many questions still that we need to be answered. So we can't stop watching here,
Yeah.
Definitely, how did this Pietro get to Earth? I mean, there's the shock factor back at the sword facility when they say she recast Pietro.
Yeah.
I mean, how? Was that Wanda who truly pulled him from, let's just say, or I'm just going to use the term, Earth 1A versus Earth 1?
Yeah.
Or is there, like we said, another person in play, a higher power? So I think that's a lot of questions to be answered. There's one more thing I want to touch on in this episode because I wrote it down when we were watching and I wanted to bring it up. Bless you. So, bless you.
Thank you.
So we got a couple, last week we talked about how, possibly would Captain Marvel be getting involved because, of course, Captain Marvel, the standalone film that the Rambo family is involved in. Of course, we get a line, from, I think it was Darcy Lewis, to Monica Rambeau saying, well, what if we get Captain Marvel involved? And she goes, and it sort of zooms in on Monica Rambeau's face, and she says, "We're not talking about her. Yeah, we're talking about Wanda.
Like she doesn't want to talk about her or something."
Yes. So what happened there, and more evidence that maybe Captain Marvel is going to get involved in this, which I think we're both all for.
What happened to their relationship, Monica and Captain Marvel?
Of course, they were so close in episode 1. If you recall, Monica, a child Monica, was the one who helped choose Captain Marvel's outfit and gave her the courage to stand up to. It was Jamie Lee Curtis as the higher knowledge, Kree knowledge, or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that was sort of what gave her strength and unhinged her powers.
And while we're talking about time periods, Captain Marvel, a movie about going back to the 90s, want to kind of go into, I think you said you had a big negative too. I forgot. Maybe you could talk about it more specifically now that we're in spoilers. My biggest negative, I think I kind of touched on it, was they kind of put the 80s sitcom aspect of this episode in the background a little bit, which is understandable.
Yeah,
which is why I still give it a 9.
That was sort of my one gripe was I wasn't crazy about the additions of Tommy and Billy.
Yeah.
I thought they were thrown in there, all for it. Of course, Scarlet Witch, played by Elizabeth Olsen, younger sister of the Olsen twins, made famous in Full House.
Which is this as an homage to.
And that's the only reason I felt like they put them at this age, the age of 5, as twins, sort of just with, these quippy lines. But I felt like they were really unnecessary. Maybe they're going to play a bigger factor later on. Of course, they did have that great sequence once the dog died, well, Mommy, can't you bring her back to life? You can do it. You can fix anything.
One thing I did love about their homage to the 80s that they did really well, I think we were just talking about this, how they have like this monologue of like teaching a lesson.
Yep.
Like, she sits down with her 2 sons here, and they start playing that typical music when it's it's time to have a
heart to heart talk.
A heart to heart. That's what I'm trying to look for. Yeah, it's the heart to heart music when they sit down. Like Uncle Jesse in Full House would sit down with Michelle, whoever, and sit down and say, "Oh no, you can't go out with this person or whatever. You can't." Just expect everyone to like you. There's always some message.
Yep.
They did that in this too,
Absolutely.
and I love that. Yeah, that was one of the best parts too. But was there any big gripe? I think you said there's a big gripe, maybe concerning the commercial. I mean, there wasn't.
Oh, I see. I didn't have a problem with it. Like I said, I think my biggest gripe at this point was Timmy and Billy.
Yeah.
Tommy and Billy.
Yeah. Tommy and Billy.
That was my big. I just felt like. They were there and they could have done more with them. We could have discovered more, but of course there's always 4 more episodes to do that.
We should, before we go, talk about what our commercial was this time.
Yeah, so
Lagos.
It was Lagos paper towels, of course, for any spills, like it didn't happen. Wanda, of course, was that in Civil War?
I think it was Civil War.
The opening sequence of Civil War, stopped an explosion in the middle of a crowded Lagos, street and throws it into a building, which then it goes off and destroys the building in Lagos, which of course triggers the Sokovia Accords. Or I wouldn't say necessarily triggers. It was always in the works, but sort of what finally pushes people.
It's the catalyst.
Yeah,
it's the catalyst for everything that happens in the MCU so far. That's the whole reason why, that, Iron Man and Captain America have that big falling out.
Yep. Yeah. And we hear that as well. It's referenced before in the briefing with Jimmy and the director of the FBI when he's briefing on Wanda Maximoff, and he says, "I don't speak ill of anyone." And he goes, "Well, don't forget about Lagos and Germany," which of course also the final culminating scene that caused so much destruction in Civil War.
Yeah. And now, how do you feel about the aspects outside of Westview? This is where we should kind of finish off our discussion here. Is, in my opinion, another reason why I had kind of two knocks against this episode. The fact that they pushed the sitcom homages back a little bit. The comedy as well, a little bit pushed back, not as many big jokes in this one, a couple, but not as many. And the other big thing is that we get more explanations in the outside of Westview world, with Sword and everything. But I feel like nothing interesting is actually happening there, just explaining what we're seeing.
Correct. But I mean, I think that's supposed to be more of, paying homage to us, the viewer. I think that's exactly
Maybe
what the people,
for the fans that just don't understand.
Right.
You and me, we just kind of get everything mostly. But
yeah, but I mean, there were some cool aha moments. I would say I liked when Monica Rambeau finds out about her outfit. From of course, when she's thrown out of Westview, she grabs the gun and shoots it, and it's bulletproof. And she goes, "I was wearing a bulletproof vest." Now the outfit is 87% Kevlar.
It's altering matter.
Yes.
Yeah.
And of course, then we get that awesome idea. What if we send something into Westview that fits in? We've been trying to send in people from outside where matter is altered. What about if we send something in that Wanda cannot alter, which is what leads to the drone strike, which unbeknownst to us and Monica Rambeau, she thinks it's just observation. And then eventually leads to Wanda coming out of the hex and that awesome standoff scene with the Sword agents.
And now, of course, we get to what do we think we're going to be seeing in next week's episode. Right. Of course, I think we're going to get our Halloween sequence. I've been waiting for it. Yes. And I think that we're going to get our Halloween sequence, and we're going to get 90s sitcoms, and I think we're going to get Friends. Right?
I truly hope so. Now, we do have the line that we've been seeing again and again in the trailers, where Wanda sees Vision driving a car. She's shocked. She goes, "Am I dead?" And he goes, "No, why?" And she goes, "Because you are." And that's a chilling sequence. My thoughts are maybe Wanda or whoever, things are starting to fall apart in Westview. Maybe there's a reset button. And that's why I'm thinking, things are starting to get found out. Somebody's going to have to hit this reset button, and we're going to have to start from scratch again. And that's going to help us understand how we got to where we are in Westview now. Because we're going to have either that or a flashback sequence of some sort to figure out what happened so as to get Wanda to create this hex. Is it all Wanda, or what higher power is being involved here that has helped her maximize her powers, recreate the hex, and bring life? Not only, bring someone back to life, but maybe, I'm not trying to be too naive here, but the whole pregnancy, that went so fast. Is that her too? Is she just, speeding along this process? She's creating life too in that case.
Yeah, absolutely. And is she altering reality, or is it someone else?
Yeah.
My guess is Deep Cut from Spider-Man, the animated series. Okay. Madame Web. She is the one. There's this great series of episodes back in animated Spider-Man, the animated series, where he's sent to all these different dimensions, and he's even sent to our world where they're filming Spider-Man movies, and he sees the actor playing Spider-Man in the animated series. It's really great. So they send him through this multiverse, and looks like that's where we're kind of going.
Yeah. Man, there was one more idea that I wanted to say. No, it's all good. We'll come back to it next week, I'm sure. But yeah, really excited to see where they go with this. Who's pulling the strings? Is it all Wanda? If not, who else is involved? And who else we're going to get involved in these final 4 episodes? Are we going to see Captain Marvel? Are we going to see Doctor Strange?
I think we're going to see Doctor Strange.
Who are we going to see? Yeah.
I think we're definitely seeing Doctor Strange, because it has to be something mystical controlling her, something magical, or maybe she's developing magical powers. I don't know what's going on really, but What I wanted to say, though, is that in this episode, Vision brought up the point that why are there no other kids in Westview?
Mhm.
Why are Tommy and Billy, or Billy and, I don't know, yeah. Tommy and Billy.
Which could play a great point into why we're going to see a Halloween scene. Yeah.
Which is all these kids, and she's going to say, no, look, everyone's out for Halloween, Vision. What are you talking about? Everybody has kids.
Yes.
And then he's going to be driving, and I think we're going there next episode.
Yeah.
Are we going to get Friends? Friends is more of a 2000s show, isn't it?
Mid-90s. I think it started in 1995.
Seinfeld.
Seinfeld is a good example as well. We'll see where we go. No, really excited, though.
Yeah. So one final time, our scores. We both think it's amazing. Ryan gave it a half point higher than me. I give it a 9. He gives it a 9.5. I think we both agree best episode of WandaVision to date.
Yep, absolutely.
So, of course, we give you the recommend, and we also want to recommend you to come back next week for our episode 6 review. Going to be a great episode next week, like we just were discussing.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, you can find some other stuff coming our way soon. RB, you want to tell them what other stuff?
Yeah, of course. It's Super Bowl weekend. I think we're going to definitely do an episode, our favorite football movies. There are quite a few great ones out there, both comedic and serious. So excited about that, as well as I think we're going to do our first ever Super Bowl commercial review episode. Pick out some of our favorites after the big game and come back to you with some of our favorites. Hopefully, get you guys involved, the viewers commenting your favorite Super Bowl commercial from this year. We've had years where every commercial has been gold. We've had years where every commercial's been a dud. Hopefully, this one's a good year. And anything else? Yeah, we've got, of course, Netflix coming out with a new movie every week, so a lot of new movies to review, as well as HBO Max with films premiering the same day they come out in theaters. So lots of great content coming your guys' way.
And we still want to cover the movies that we didn't get a chance to see in 2020, right? And the years before, too. Like we said, we do want to do this year. We want to do a look back to other years, maybe discussing films that were nominated for Oscars or just our favorite films that year. But one we didn't cover in 2020 yet that Ryan recently watched, Bad Education.
Oh, yes.
Film with Hugh Jackman, who is kind of related to this since he's one of the X-Men. He's Wolverine. Definitely want to do a review of that one because I think Ryan really enjoyed that one. And he wants to talk about it. So
that's a great one. Shout out to HBO Max for releasing that one.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that said, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at DomGonzalez48. And you can follow RB over on Twitter at RB with the call and on Instagram at RB_the_SID. Let us know what you thought of the episode. Give us a follow. Send us some feedback, whatever you feel like, and don't forget to like the episode if you enjoyed. Subscribe for more videos coming your way, and of course, as always, have a great week and thanks for watching.